Evicting a tenant can seem like a complicated process, but in this video we'll quickly explain the eviction laws in Maryland and outline some simple steps that landlords can take to initiate an eviction. We're eForms, the world's largest online database of fillable legal forms, and in this video we'll talk about what the eviction process looks like, Maryland laws that determine how evictions are handled, and how to legally remove a non-compliant tenant from a property. Be sure to watch to the end of this video to find a link to a fillable eviction notice. First, what is an eviction? Eviction is the legal process associated with removing a tenant. Landlords cannot change locks on a property, physically remove a tenant from that property, or related actions on their own. If the tenant refuses to leave after violating the terms of a lease agreement, a landlord must seek an eviction from the court. Note that this is different from the simple termination of a lease. A landlord can opt not to renew a lease after the specified term has ended. There is no need to involve a court in this process. When a tenant breaches the terms of a lease agreement in Maryland, a landlord can issue one of several eviction notices. Each applies to a specific breach. One option is the notice of intent to file a complaint for summary ejectment. This form is used when a tenant fails to pay rent on the date that it's due. In some states, this allows for a grace period after a missed payment. This isn't the case in Maryland. Rent is due on the due date. If it isn't paid, the landlord can file a notice with the district court in the county where the property is located, which gives the tenant 10 days for the unpaid rent to be paid or move out. The notice should also be served on the tenant. Another option is the 14-day notice to quit. This is used when a tenant poses a risk of imminent danger or harm to themselves or others on the property, or when the tenant is found engaging in illegal activity. Tenants are served with a 14-day notice to quit and have 14 days to move out. There's also a form called a 30-day notice to quit. This can be used when the tenant breaches a lease in a way that's unrelated to the payment of rent but doesn't pose danger. An example of this kind of breach is housing an unauthorized pet. This form tells the tenant to either fix the problem or face eviction. The 60-day notice to quit is a little bit different. This form ends the monthly lease by giving the tenant 60 days to move out. If the tenant does not respond to the notice to quit within the allotted time period, the landlord can begin eviction proceedings. In order to do this, the landlord will have to obtain two forms known as a complaint and a summons from the district court where the property is located. In Maryland, these forms must be obtained in person as they are not available online. The complaint explains the nature of the tenant's lease violation. There are two different versions of this form. One applies to the non-payment of rent and the other to any kind of other lease violation. The City of Baltimore has its own form. The second form is known as a summons, which essentially just sets a court date. Copies of both forms should be delivered to the tenant. They can be affixed to the door of the rental property or sent via first-class mail. The notice can also be sent via mail or text message, but only if the tenant agrees to this in writing. Both the landlord and the tenant are required to appear in court on the date of the hearing. If the tenant does not appear or if the judge rules in the landlord's favor, the tenant will have 4 days to vacate the property. If the tenant does not leave within those 4 days, the landlord can obtain a petition for warrant of restitution from the district court. Again, this form cannot be accessed online or printed. Once this form is signed and delivered to the sheriff, it authorizes the sheriff to remove the tenant and the tenant's possessions from the property. We've got everything you need to get eviction proceedings going in Maryland. You can access eviction notices, court documents, and more at the link below. And don't forget to click that subscribe button for more videos on landlord-tenant issues.